First of all, I wish to thank AV and all the staff who helped to organize this excellent meeting. Thank you very much for all the work that you did. And also I wish to thank the sponsors that helped to cover some expenses. My presentation, as the other presentation that will give my colleagues, are not very easy, because now you know that there are a lot of people of different skills which obtain different degrees, going from archaeology, just to cite the last presentation, to physics, to engineer, to geology, etc. So my presentation, I will try to be easy, using words that can be understandable from everybody, but you know it's not an easy task. So since I'm a structural geologist, or at least since I am a geologist, of course, probably there will be something a little bit complicated for those that are not used to this topic. But anyway, please give me questions. I will reply with easy words. So let us start to introduce just a few slides about volcanic hazards. Since you know this project is related to the old geohazard, I will use a few slides to introduce the topic of this presentation that is related with the study in the field of the conduits that bring magma to the surface. So let us start from the effect of the magma that arrives to the surface, using what occurred a few years ago in Iceland, at the Eyjafjallajökull. This is the pronunciation of this difficult word. So the eruption started a few months before, but anyway, it was the most important release of ashes in the atmosphere during the 14th of April. And you will see a nice picture showing you the hazards. So when you have an eruption, of course, one of the worst hazards is represented by the emission of ashes and gas in the atmosphere. This is the effect, the nice effect that attracts a lot of tourists there, because the friction produced by the ashes going up can create light. But on the other side, when the ashes fall down, they tend to cover everything, comprising the grass. So this creates big problems for a series of years to the vegetation, killing all the vegetation. And in fact, this is an image, a nice image of what people was trying to collect the cows and the sheep. That if some of you know, I know that some of you have been in Iceland. And in Iceland, usually the sheep, especially, are free. So it was a very big trouble to collect animals. And in fact, a lot of animals died following the deposition of ashes on the ground. But ashes have another effect, driving the cars. It's impossible. But impossible is like driving on the ice. So imagine an eruption that produces ashes, the ashes fall down, cover the roads, so there is no way of escape by cars. So a lot of accidents can occur, and this accident produces a sort of damming of the roads, with the consequence of making it more difficult to escape. And then, of course, breathing. Breathing ashes is very, very dangerous. And if there are a lot of ashes in the atmosphere, you will be not able to breathe anymore. Then another hazard represented by the weight, the position of the ashes on the roofs of the houses can create collapse, failures of the ashes. And this is a rescue team that was taking away the ashes from the roof of the farms. In the circle, in the middle of the circle, is an airplane. So, of course, the dispersion of ashes in the atmosphere brought by the jet streams, for example, can create a very big problem to the air flight circulations. This is a nice image of the Prague airport a few days ago after the eruption. You see the airport, probably you remember that a lot of airports have been closed in airport, or in Europe it was completely a fall down of the transportations. And so this was an incredible economic loss of money. And then we have lava flows. Lava flows are less dangerous for the life of the people, but of course lava flows can create a huge amount of economic loss. In the upper left part, there is a nice picture. I've been there a lot of times. It's in Mexico. Is the church of San Parangaricutiro. It was a village completely destroyed by lavas. The entire village was covered, and only the church is standing out from the lavas. And the image in the bottom is from the recent eruption in Hawaii, where there have been an incredible loss of roads and buildings. This is an image with the distribution of active volcanoes in the world, where for active volcanoes we mean the volcano that had eruptions in the history. And you see there are tens and tens of active volcanoes spread, I can say, all over the world, so also the interior of the continent. This is a quite common slide, just to impress the audience, to show the number of people that died during very famous eruptions. But volcanic eruption can be forecasted. So this is the link. So first the bad things, and now the good things. The good things is that volcanic eruption can be forecasted when ascending magma gives signals. Usually, ascending magma gives signals, not always, but usually. And why there are these signals? The signals occur because the magma usually deforms the surface. The magma is represented by the red part. You see that there is a convex side of the topography. This convex side of the topography represents the deformation of the surface. So there are, of course, instruments that can detect these deformations. And also, another thing is that when magma tries to find its way to the surface, it induces seismicity. So seismicity is another very important way of recognizing magma upwelling to the surface. And this is an example from Stromboli. I told you there are a lot of instruments that can detect the deformation of the surface. And this is a very nice picture because there is a superimposition of a 3D image obtained by the digitalization model with interferometric data. Interferometric data means data obtained by a radar that sends the signals, then receives back the signals, and calculate the movement of the topography each few minutes in this case. This is an interferometric, is a radar that we place on Stromboli where there is a white triangle in the lower part of the left. So this is an on-land based radar, but then usually the radar is used by the satellites. Sorry. So, how eruption occur? Eruption occur like when you open a bottle of champagne, because the explosive force used by the gas inside produce the flying away of the core. And this is something that is very similar to what occurred in the chlorine, where the pressure of the gas is released during the explosive eruptions, and all the magma in the conduit is filled in the atmosphere, creating ashes or other scoria or other products. Let me say that the type of eruption and also explosion of a battle depends very much on the shape of the battle itself. So let me say that the location and shape of the magma conduit can contribute to determine the location and type of seismicity and the surface deformation that accompany magma shape in post-eruption. This is a very simple way to explain something that reality, of course, is more complicated, but I have to give you some explanation that can be understood from everybody. So, very important, and this is the top of my presentation, to understand how the conduits are. And to understand how a conduit of a magma conduit can be, we have to look to the past, the eroded volcano that show the conduits, in order to understand which are the entire spectra of conduits that can bring the magma to the surface. And please remember that each geometry can determine a different response of the deformation of the surface and of seismicity. I will give you some examples about this. So let us start with a very simple geometry that is represented by vertical conduits, the name is dikes. And I start with this one because I hope that if the weather will be okay, we will be able to see these dikes that are present in the interior of the calderos and Vertical dikes are typical of rift zone. Rift zone, for those that are not geologists, means a zone where there is extension. Extension due to plate separation, the sector of the crust that are split apart. So if the plate of the crust are moving away one from the other, in the middle you have extension. And this extension facilitates the upwelling of magma along vertical fracture. But in reality, what we call magma plumbing system, that is the whole system of magma from the very bottom to the surface, the magma plumbing system in reality are much more complicated than simple vertical dikes. This is a design, a sketch that assumes what you can expect to find below a volcano. So you can have vertical dike, usually from the very bottom where there is a magma source. Then you can have one or more magma chambers where the magma remains for a certain amount of time. And above this single or multiple magma chamber, you can have again vertical dikes. There is also the possibility, yes, okay. You have the vertical dikes in the middle, but you can have also inclined sheets. Inclined sheets is the name that we use for those conduits that are inclined, that are not vertical. And then we just to complicate a little bit the things, the history, we can have seals. Seals is the name that we give when the magma flow horizontally in the interior of the crust. The conduit can be isolated, like in the example to the left. In the example to the left, there is a vertical dike where you see the person, and the rest of the picture represents the rocks that hosts the dike. To the right, I'm sorry, it's not very easy to recognize the feature, but all these are inclined sheets. All these are inclined sheets, and the host rock is represented only by this part and this part. So this picture to the right represents a field case where the conduit replaced almost all the host rock. So this means that under a volcano you can have a lot of conduits, not one, as in the famous challenge in the Earth interior of Giulio Verne. That was the conduit between Stromboli, I hope that all of you saw the film, the movie, and this conduit brought the magma to the surface. In reality, there is a system of conduits that can be really, really very complex. Sorry. Okay, again, difficult to see this picture, I'm sorry for that, but here there is an image, trust me, where there is an extremely complicated network of dikes. So this is a sketch that represents what you don't see here. So each red line represents an inclined sheet or a dike. So you see below this eroded volcano that is in Iceland, it's like if we are looking to this part, you see how complicated is the picture. So you can imagine when you have an erupt, when the magma is going up, you have to decipher, to understand the signals, what they are suggesting. So they are suggesting that you will have a dike just here, so this means that you will have probably an eruption here, that is to say here, or the signals are suggesting that you have an inclined sheet, so probably you will have an eruption here, or even that you have a seal, that is to say you have the dike, the magma flowing, escaping horizontally, so maybe that you will not have an eruption in this case. Let us start to go more in detail. Dikes. So how dikes form? First of all, you need a fracture. You need a discontinuity in the rocks where the magma can flow into, enlarge the fracture, and create space for itself. This is a very nice picture because here you have a fracture. Probably you can see a thin line. So this is the host rock. This is the fracture. Here you have a little bit of magma, just a little bit, and here you have the dike. Here is a sketch, the same picture. So this picture is like a photograph taken during the intrusion of the magma. The magma was coming from the right. Here it was able to enlarge the fracture. Here was starting to intrude the fracture. And here it creates it created the fracture. Because the magma push usually creates new fractures. It's this process that creates seismicity. The seismicity is due to the fractures created by the magma, or sometimes also by enlarging this fracture. But why the history ended here? The history ended. The magma was not able to enlarge the fracture anymore, was not able to create the fracture again, so the intrusion ended, because the force the magma is able to use to produce the fracture can end at a certain time. If the magma pressure or overpressure is enough, the magma continuously create the fracture, arrive to the surface or wherever it wants to go. But if the magma pressure will be dissipated, will end, also the intrusion will end. How magma? Oh yes, please.
You mentioned something about the time, saying okay, maybe we'll end, maybe we won't end. So have you done any study to look what would be the time scale, or in the different tectonic sectors?
Okay, the time scale is a problem because there are some studies that were able to detect all the progression of the dike up to the intrusion or up to the very shallow surface, and there are a few studies on this that have been published, and the time can change very long. The velocity can be very, there can be one order of magnitude of difference. So you can have from hours to days, just to give an idea of the velocity.
So like say with INSAR, would you be able to see a deformation in the surface that you link with a dike?
Allora, the deformation of the surface depends on the depth of the dike. Right. Yes, at a certain moment the dike is able to deform the surface. In that case, you can detect the deformation. So this means that you can detect the deformation in maybe hours, weeks, maybe even in some cases.
So, and that would be a proxy on fracture propagation time.
Right. I have to say also that sometimes there have been no deformation in the surface. This is very, very unusual, but sometimes it occurs. Probably this occurs when you have an open conflict. If you have an open fissure, that the magma just goes into the open fissure, and you don't have any deformation. This is very rare. Usually you have deformation. And how this magma open the fracture? Usually, again, there is a spectrum of possibility. Usually the magma open the fracture perpendicular to the walls. This is a nice field example, again, to demonstrate this, because this is a pre-existing dike, this is another pre-existing dike, and you see this is the vector of displacement of this piercing point that should have been connected with this piercing point, and the magma intrusion opened the walls more or less perpendicular. This is another case, this is an older one, this is a new one, and again, the opening occurred more or less perpendicular. But the history can be, of course, more complicated. But we must be aware of what can occur, the various possibilities. Let us focus on this sketch. This sketch is a section view. This represents the dike. This represents the discontinuity in the rock succession, because the rocks can be very different from one from the other one. And so if you have many discontinuities, the dike can become arrested or stopped, as it is used to say. And this means that the force, the overpressure of the dike is not enough to break through this mechanical discontinuity. In this case, the dike can become arrested, or the dike can transform itself into a seal. It can bend horizontally and travel along this discontinuity. This is a nice example, again from Iceland. This is a dike. These are pyroclastic deposits. This is a lava. You can understand very easy that the mechanical properties of lavas are very different from pyroclastic deposits. And so the dike was able to arrive at this point, and then he turned it into seal and then stopped it. Another arrangement of dikes can be echelon. Echelon, so that is a geological term, but it simply means that the dike is not a continuous, the section view is not continuous, but it has a several jumps into the interior of the rocks. So when you go in the field, you see a dike, you imagine that the dike stopped here. No, in reality the dike jump here and go up in this position. This example is just to make you use about how to read the data in the field and to imagine how can be the geometry of a conduit, of an active conduit.
Alessandro,
Yes.
can I just, we've had this discussion before about the chicken and egg.
Oh, 20 years.
Yeah, sorry. So if you've got an on-echelon arrangement of dikes like that, surely that requires that the fracture was first, because if you're asking for that to be opened by propagating dike, then there wouldn't be a reason for the on-echelon arrangement.
So you are questioning why there is
well, I'm just suggesting that maybe this is an example where the chicken was before the egg, or you know what I mean?
Well,
the fracture was first.
Based on the field studies,
magma pressure.
based on the field study that we made together in a lot of places in the world, I suspect that dikes tend to follow the existing fractures. So if you have a system of existing fracture, a dike can follow one fracture and then jump to another fracture. So not always the dike creates itself the way to the surface by creating a fracture, but they can just use existing fracture. Of course, this is quite obvious because you save energy in this way. You don't have to break the rock. So you have to win only the buttressing resistance and not the cohesion of the rock. So I agree that chicken or egg sometimes can be the opposite.
It was just an instance of the other way around, the egg first or whichever.
Yes. Can use existing fractures or can create its own way in case of strange stresses. If you have strange stresses near the surface, you can obtain an echelon arrangement, creating echelon fractures. This is another less common or less published in the literature example of the termination of dikes. So you have seen that dikes can terminate against the discontinuity. They just can terminate away because they dissipated their overpressure, but in a very point, in a fracture. Or dikes can end with this sort of finger-like shape. You see there's a lot of fingers, and this is due to the dissipation of the magma pressure in the interior of the deposit. This is more, can occur in a very lot of situations. In the literature, sometimes it's said that this can occur when you have loose deposit, like scoria deposit, but in reality, this occurs in a very hard rock. So that's not true. You can have this finger-like termination or dissipation of the overpressure in any type of rock. This is a nice example from the Reunion Island. You have a dike. This dike was climbing to the surface and then arrested in correspondence of a thick lava flow. So you don't need to have a completely change of the rock succession, as I showed you before, but you can have just one different layer in the middle of a quite homogeneous succession, and this one single layer with different stiffness can stop the magma rising to the surface. Just since there are a lot of students here, please pay attention to don't make in the field very mistakes. In this case, we are strongly here. Here we see two dikes, one dike here and one dike there. Of course, they are not easily visible in the picture, but I put these white lines to show you the dikes if you will be in the field, or with the drone on this vertical cliff, you would see very easily these dikes. And what is the matter of this picture? That this dike stop here and this dike stop there. So don't make confusion between dikes stopped against the discontinuity with dikes cut by an erosional surface. Okay, so just for a message for the student. In this case, these are two erosional surfaces, so these dikes probably arrived more to the surface, but they have been eroded, so they seem what they don't are. Okay. Finally, what dikes produce at the surface? Dikes produce the surface deformation, which usually are represented by a graben, a depression, exactly above the dike tip, or the dike tip. Dike tip is the termination of the dike. So exactly the depression of the dike, and you can have different folds to the size of the depression. But the important thing is that probably the battery is going. So there is no more the battery. Do you have another battery? Thank you very much. It's far away, no? But I can use probably. You can see the arrow? No? No? Yes, but not. Okay, no, that's the next one. Okay, so if you look to the picture, okay, in the upper part there is a convex topography. This convex topography.
He's playing.
Sorry. This is another thing. Sorry. Lost everything. Lost. No. What? Sorry. Okay. No, I will do the same for you. Give okay, thank you very much. So the topography is convex upward. This means this is the effect of the dike, the force of the dike trying to intrude into the crust, to produce this convex deformation that can be recorded by instruments. And usually above the dike tip, you have a depression. And this is a nice picture of Iceland. This person is there. And here there was the dike that arrived very close to the surface, creating this bulging. You see the convex topography perfectly, that is exactly this one. In the middle of the bulging, there is the graben and the folds. This is a sketch. So this car, this one, and this one. And just as a curiosity, there is a house still inhabited. This house was standing exactly on the tip of the dike. But the dike didn't arrive to the surface. The force, the overpressure, finished before, and there was no eruption in this case. How dikes are arranged usually in the interior or below the volcano? There are two end members, just to make things easy. Can be with a radial geometry. In this case, the radial arrangement, this is a plan view of an eroded volcano. This radial geometry is due to the magma force, so the magma force controls the distribution of the dikes. But in the case there is also the tectonic force that influences the distribution of the dikes. You can have dikes oriented parallel to the horizontal principal stress. So these are the two end members that you can have. And there is all the possibilities in between these two end members. This is another possible arrangement, always in plane view. And this instead is due to the topography of the volcano. If you have an elongated volcano, the elongated volcano is represented by this ellipse, you can have a different distribution of the stresses due to the gravity, to the mass of the volcano, and this induces these characteristics shape of the dikes. So a rift zone due to the spreading of the core of the volcano, and then the dikes tend to rotate and assume this fan shape in the two extremes, the two sides of the volcano. So also topography can control the geometry of the conflicts. So this is just a quick example. We have Stromboli and Etna, and we have the dikes represented by these thin lines here. This is the major part of Stromboli, this is the major part of Stromboli. This is Mount Etna, and you see that in some way there is the rift zone here, a rift zone there on the core of the volcano. But if you look here, there is a fan-shaped distribution of dikes, also in the case of Etna. So this is very similar to this sketch. So maybe that topography controls the distribution of dikes in these two nice examples of Italy. Then another event that can contribute to control the dikes is the collapse of a volcano. There are people here studying the landslides and volcanoes, and probably all of you know that in Stromboli there's been a series of collapses. The remnants of this collapse is represented by the shadow photo, that is this depression that you can see. The island, this is a section that we developed method simulation along this line. This is the situation of the Stromboli previous to the collapse. And this is the situation of Stromboli after the collapse. This is the amphitheater left by this failure. The red color and these very small crosses represent the state of stress in the interior of the volcano. Just without going into detail, but anyway, all of you can see that there has been a change of the colors of the shape and the distribution of the color from this stage to this stage. And these changes are represented by the different shape of the volcano. So the different shape of the volcano due to the collapse produce a transformation, a change of the state of stress on the interior of the volcano just due to gravity. And this can control the intrusion of dikes. The dikes are very sensitive, I'm going to student, are very sensitive to the stress tensor, to the stress distribution due to tectonics and topography. We made also some analog experiment to confirm this interpretation, and this is a plain view of an analog experiment. We produce this analog of a cone and an amphitheater, a depression that should represent the collapse, lateral collapse of the volcano. And then we introduce an analog of magma in the interior of the volcano in two different points. And in both points, this represents the conduit and this represents another conduit. You can see that a dike was produced, and these dikes forward the lateral scar left by the collapse of the volcano. So just some experiment to show that there is this control. Now go below the volcanoes. So we have been looking at the dikes in the volcano. Now we look below the volcano. Of course, in a eroded volcano, it's more eroded volcano than Stromboli or Etna. And usually above the magma chamber, usually there are a lot of inclined sheets. And these inclined sheets, you can see in the field here, you see that they are inclined towards the magma chamber that is located somewhere here in this position. So they tend to converge towards the magma chamber. Here there are other examples from Iceland. Here you see a serial sketch looking in the field. You see a lot of inclined sheets. And you can, with a lot of patience, with a lot of work, you can measure all the inclined sheets. They are represented by this line. So each line represents a series of measurement of one inclined sheet. Then you try to solve the geometry, how they turn, how they bend, and at the end you see a series of concentric circles that represent the deep, the geometry of these inclined sheets. So all these inclined sheets tend to converge towards this point, let me say, towards this area. And so this is a sketch, a 3D sketch that represents the geometry of those inclined sheets. So the inclined sheets, usually above the magma chamber, tend to form a cone, a series of cones. They are termed in fact cone sheets, and they tend to converge again against the magma chamber. Another example for the Sky Island, made with Derek, a beautiful place. You see, beautiful place from the landscape, but also for the inclined sheets, of course. You see here there are some guys, students here somewhere, so you can recognize from the scale. You don't see the students in fact, because this is quite high cliff. You see how many inclined sheets there are in this beautiful place. So again, we measured a lot of inclined sheets. In the ending, we solved the geometry. So it appears that here there were two magma chambers, because the inclined sheets tend to converge towards two focus, one deeper and one shallower. This is a numerical modeling about the possible magma path around the magma chamber. Also, again, there is a spectra of possible geometries. depending on the shape of the magma chamber. This is a spherical shape. You can have, this is not very possible, the presence of this fan below, but it's being modeled by colleague Agus Gudmundsson, that someone here knows well, I suppose. And there is usually you have the conical sheets above. In the case the magma chamber is elliptical, you have a different shape because here all the conical sheets have different inclination. Instead, here you see that they tend to dip toward magma chamber, but they have more or less the same inclination. So pay attention that when you are in the field, based on the geometry of the kind sheet, you can suggest something about the shape and the location of the magma chamber. Based on my experience, I suppose that most of the magma chamber are more similar in shape to this one than to the spherical one. Assuming a volcano can have different intrusions, and these intrusions can be dikes along a rift, and this can produce a series of eruptions in the center of the volcano or on the flank aligned along the rift. Or you can have inclined sheets. In this case, you can have eruption all around the volcano, at the base of the volcano, or even outside the volcano. So, in the plane surrounding the volcano, if you have sigma or other signals that suggest an inclined sheet rising to the surface, you can imagine that you can have an eruption also outside the flank of the volcano or on the flank of the volcano.
This is the case of Etna, Alessandro. This is the case of Etna.
Below Etna there is a very complicated array of conduits, and in reality most of these seems to be vertical, but anyway there have been eruptions all over Etna, so maybe some of these can be linked with some inclined sheet, why not? Also because there are 334 center of emissions on the flank of the volcano, so probably some of these forward some inclined sheet. Yes.
Can I ask a question? So how do you know the extent of those sheets? Is there a way to take some measurements?
I took all the measurements of all the studies made on inclined sheet all over the world, and I made some statistics, not shown here, and the maximum measured up to now, the maximum diameter of all the inclined sheets is about 25 kilometers. 25. But there are some tens of works on this, not hundreds of works. So from a statistical point of view, maybe that we don't have enough data. It depends on the problem on the dimension of the magma chamber. There's some other features, some other mechanisms that we didn't understand to the way up now. Also because there are magma chambers that are very large. Probably they don't produce conical sheets, so the situation is very complicated. Okay, these are two nice examples of dikes that can bend into seals. Just a moment. To the left is taken from Niziros, and to the right from Iceland again. And you see a dike that bends completely into seals. So this means that if you have signals suggesting a dike rising to the surface, there could occur a bending of the dike into seal. So you can expect to have a possible eruption above the dike, but this is not always true. You can have a different situation. You have to follow very detailed the signals, and be prepared to have a situation like this one during an impending eruption. No. We saw in the field, and also colleagues saw the same, that a lot of seal can be packed up one above the other, producing a laccolith. You know the term laccolith, at least the student geology. Laccolith is an intrusion, a very thick intrusion of magma in the earth. Laccolith have been thought for a lot of tens of years that were producing during a continuous intrusion, like a mushroom growing in the tail of the crust. Instead, we are looking in the tail. It seems that a lot of laccolith in reality are represented by a series of seals. So a series of horizontal intrusion that produce this thing. This is a very famous laccolith in Iceland, and all of you can see that there are in reality a series of horizontal lines that you can see here, and all these horizontal lines represent seals. So a lot of seals, a lot of horizontal intrusions that can create, if they remain very hot, if they intrude one after the other in a short time span, they can create a new magma chamber. So a magma chamber made of seals, hot seals. And then this is very important to suggest that magma can flow horizontally to long distance. Again, for hazard. These are two real examples of the plumbing system below volcanoes in Japan. To the left, the Hiroyama, Shinonodake, Ochamoachi volcano system. They are all three active volcanoes. And you see that, sorry for this, you see that the magma chamber is not below the volcano, but is displaced to the side. And there is a system of inclined sheets bringing the magma to these volcanoes. So this is a real example. This is the scale. This is another one. This is in the Hicho Nishiyama volcanic system in Japan again. And here is even more complicated. This is the main magma source. Then there are two magma chambers, very large. This is the scale. They are like 20 to 10 kilometers large. And then there are dikes and inclined sheets going out from these very flat, shallow magma chambers. One at 10 kilometers, one at 5 kilometers of depth. You can see how the magma pumping system will be very complicated. So this means that if this is active, as it seems, you can have a dike in any position along this 24, if I remember correctly, kilometers of distance of this magma chamber. Or even you can have inclined sheets here creating eruption much far away from where the main volcano is located. Of course, this is unmeasured, but you can imagine the surface in a onshore volcano, how large can be the area affected by the hazard. Seals, what seals produce? Seals produce deformation. They are quite close to the surface, and this deformation usually is represented by a wide part of the land that rises upward. So it's not like for the dikes, that is an elongated area of formation, but it's a quite flat area with two sides with a zone of concentration of the formation. This is due to the shape of the seal that is an horizontal intrusion, so it tends to push upward all the block above the seal. So the response of the formation of the instruments is quite different with respect to a dike. Calderas, we are in Santorini, so this is a caldera, just a few slides of this. There are section views. These represent different magma chambers. Below a caldera, usually is a magma chamber. There are some statistical observations that suggest that more or less the diameter of the magma chamber that produced the caldera is similar to the diameter of the caldera. But you have to count that magma chamber, that caldera, and they have the same image. In this example, I put just one caldera for each situation, just to show different shapes of the magma chamber can induce different deformation. In this case, a flat magma chamber can induce such a deformation, but if you have magma chamber with this shape, you can have can induce another deformation of the surface. If you have this shape, you can induce another deformation of the surface. Just so I don't want to go into detail because it's a long history, but just to suggest that not only dikes and inclined sheets and seals can produce deformation of the surface, but also the same magma chambers, if it is quite shallow, can induce different signals at the surface. These are a couple of examples. In the upper part, there is the Carter Lake caldera. So these are real examples. This is the magma chamber. There is a system of dikes in the middle, and there are also inclined sheets to the side of the caldera. This is another one. This is the famous Toba caldera. This is another supervolcano. And the image of the plumbing system below the Toba caldera indicates a series of stacked seals. So there are a series of seals, and these seals are interconnected by dikes in different positions. And this is a zone of mesh. That is a zone of hot fluids here very near to the surface. So two examples of very different geometries of the plumbing system. And finally, just to resume, in the calderas we can have the entire possibilities of the caldera are more complicated, usually the larger also volcanic system, and you can have a series of possibilities going from a central main conduit. After the caldera collapse, you can have the construction of a new volcano in the middle of the caldera, like securing here in Santorini, or you can have a new volcano on the side along the caldera faults, or you can have a volcano on the shoulder of the caldera depression. This is near the scarp, this is outside the caldera. There are some nice examples of this in Mexico, for example. Or you can have a series of volcanic centers all along the faults of the caldera or around. Or you can have an aligned series of volcanic centers crossing from the shoulder to the tail of the caldera. And this can be due just to the presence of dikes. Or you can have a fault, like in this case, a fault that crosses the caldera. In this case, the alignment is guided by the presence of this zone of discontinuity, the rock, so the magma uses this discontinuity. Or you can have, of course, a mixing of all these possibilities. I think that this is the last one. Yes, this is the sum of parameters that we saw in this presentation. This is the very last slide. So the volcano, the magma conduits are guided by magma pressure, then the general morphology of the volcano or the caldera, the presence of lateral collapses, and the tectonic regional state of stress. Under the volcano, you can have the load of the overburden, the load of the volcano above, the magma chamber pressure, the magma chamber location and shape, the regional faults again, and the regional tectonic stress amount. So there is a mixing of competition between all these parameters that can contribute to create the magma plumbing system below and in the interior of the volcano. So all the persons that are used to interpret the signals during an impending eruption must be aware, I think, of all these possibilities. And all these possibilities, since they depend on these parameters, there must be a strong interaction between seismology, geologists, of course, etc., that we have, in order to know the situation of that very volcano and in order to know what we can expect due to all the information that we have on that volcano. This is why we are here, because we have a lot of skills, and these skills, this different methodology must work together, must speak together in order to be able to correctly interpret the signals. Great.